Thanks for coming in today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for anybody that doesn't know, you and I work together regularly.
Yep.
You remodel and build additions and stuff like that in Nashville.
Yep.
I'm the granite guy.
Yep.
So we've known each other for several years.
Yep.
One. So what's your recollection of how we started these conversations?
The first one, trying to remember where it was at, what job it was at. I don't remember if it was Mike's in Brentwood or if it was somewhere else. But I just mentioned something about God and passing, and you just looked at me and said, "No, I don't believe that."
Okay.
And I went, "Wait, you don't believe what? God?"
That sounds about like me,
And that piqued my interest because I was like, wait a second. Everybody I know, most people I work with, most people I work for, most people I go to church with,
Yeah.
my circles, my groups, my friends, they're all Christians.
Right.
I don't know any atheists. And I was like, how do you not believe in God?
I remember that first conversation because we kind of pulled over and parked right there, in the driveway across the bed of your truck. I think
it was Mike's.
Okay.
I think it was Mike's house.
I remember a big white house, and we were almost.
We painted his house.
We were almost at the front door.
Yep.
And your truck was parked right there.
Yep.
And so we sat, and next thing you know, we're into this whole religious discussion over the bed of your truck.
Yeah.
And it got a little. We got a little animated in that
I'm sure I did.
Conversation. I think you were amazed. Like, what do you mean you don't believe? I mean, how can you?
I'm total shock.
Yeah. So we got a little animated, and of course, I wasn't backing down. So I think even in that first conversation, we stayed there for 45 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe an hour.
Yeah.
I remember leaving that conversation, and I called Patricia, or told her that night when I got home, and I said, we might have lost Rick. And she's like, what do you mean? Why? And I said, man, I got in this whole religious discussion on the job site. And she was like, oh, God, because she knows how I can be sometimes. I get a little excited and, spicy about things. So
yeah.
Anyway, so we had that first conversation. You were a little shocked, like, what do you mean you don't believe,
Yeah.
So now we've had dozens of conversations.
Absolutely.
And you've met, so for anybody that I haven't told this or who's watching this, we do a thing here in Nashville called the Conversation Coalition. And it's a mixed group of Christians and atheists. And we regularly get together and we talk about various issues. Where do you get your morality? What's your explanation for the origins of the universe? How old the earth is? Can someone be good without God? We go back and forth on all these different things. And so we have these conversation groups. I invited you. You've come, enjoyed them. Everybody loves hanging out with you. We do dinners. We gather and we talk about these things, which you mentioned a minute ago. Man, all my friends are Christian. Everybody that I hang around with. And that's the thing, is that everybody tends to stay in their own echo chamber, whatever their belief is. If they're Muslim, all their friends are Muslim.
Right.
They're Christian, all their friends are Christian. And they just kind of hang around with people that are just believe the same as they do.
Yep.
And nobody gets outside of that,
No, that's right.
And I have found I really enjoy getting outside of that and meeting people that believe differently than me and having conversations about it. How's that been for you?
Yeah, I was actually on the way here talking with my daughter about it. Why do I come? Why am I interested? What's piquing my interest in that?
Yeah.
One of the things that, as a Christian, we're supposed to create a defense for our faith, which I've never had to do.
Or be ready to give an explanation. Yeah. Be ready to give
explain why do I believe what I believe, and have a reason. Why do you believe that there's a God? And we're supposed to be ready for that. And I'd never been challenged on that, and never even understood why that was scriptural. Why was that even in the scriptures? But I get it now.
Right. So in having these conversations and being around all these people, has it made you dig deeper or be curious and say?
Yeah, it's actually, so I've always listened or read a lot of books, mostly audible books. Mm-hmm. So it's more listening to books, but there's times I'm really good at doing that. And then there's times that I'm really not. And it's really gotten me back into studying and listening to different books, stuff that I've been piling up over the last several years, and it's really got me back into studying some of the scriptural stuff on some of the stuff I've been challenged on.
Okay. So do you feel? I guess you'd say you feel like your faith is growing as you're challenged.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
See,
no doubt about that.
See, I kind of feel the same thing on the opposite side of the table, obviously, because people are like, why do you believe in evolution? I'm like, well, I don't really know, but let's dig into that a little bit. And so next thing you know, I spend 4 hours going through the evidence for this and the evidence for that, why we believe this and how do we know what we know, that kind of thing. So in meeting all these people that believe differently, did you have a certain view in your head of what an atheist might be like? And then were you surprised in meeting these people?
No, I don't think I had any. I mean, I think it's much like Christians. They can come in any shape, color, from any country. I mean, like Pedro, like I'd love to hear his story of how he became a Christian. I expect to have him on here one time and I hear his story.
Right.
Because I enjoyed your sister's story.
She's amazing.
Oh,
she really is.
I texted you the other night while I was watching that video.
Yeah.
I was like, I hope he's not asleep.
No, not at all.
Because I've grew a lot of respect for her watching that video.
She's incredible, man. She really is. She's a connector, and whether you're just sitting around a campsite or just hanging out at their house or anything, everything's always off. TV's off. There's no other distractions, and she really just moves in to where you at these days. What's going on with you? What's challenging you? If I've got somebody new with me that she hasn't met, tell me your story. If they're in school, what led you to study this and that? She just is so curious about people and wanting to know their story. And you could sit there and talk to her for 3 hours. She may never tell you anything about herself. But if you ask, she's an open book. She'll tell you anything you want to know. So you brought your son, Carson, to some of these.
Yeah.
He's in school right now, right?
He is down at Sanford.
Okay. What is he studying?
He's actually studying ministry.
Okay.
Probably going into youth ministry, but he's studying Christian ministry.
Okay. I've met Carson. He's awesome. I love how outgoing he is, and he's like me. He'll talk to anybody.
Yeah.
He's not bashful or
No.
anything like that. I think the first time that he and I met, we weren't around each other like 3 minutes, and we're already just going at it. I'm like, I like this kid. What was his reaction to coming and seeing these conversations? And
well, it was kind of funny because he was taking a class at Sanford this last semester that was on other religions, atheist, and studying all different viewpoints of different people and different religions, different things that are out there in the world. So he was experiencing it from an academic standpoint,
okay,
and reading about it and studying about it. And then here I was coming in contact with atheists throughout Nashville that I would have never met any other way. I would have never come across Elliot or some of these Cindy throughout if it wasn't for this coalition, which
right
is really cool.
It really is, man. I haven't seen anything like it or heard of anything else like it online or I've heard of debates, but as far as a group that regularly gets together and they work together and they have dinners together and they go over to each other's homes, they care about each other.
Yeah.
They're friends, but they have different beliefs and they get together and they challenge each other on these topics. I was like, I don't find that anywhere else. So
I've not seen it anywhere else, but I'm also coming out of a bubble. So,
well, I mean, I think everybody is kind of, but no, I mean, searching for it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that anywhere else. So hopefully, this and the Conversation Coalition and, the other things that we do will show people that you can have different worldviews, but that doesn't mean you can't care about each other and value each other. And
that's right.
If anything comes out of all this, that's what I'm hoping comes from all of it. That and some great conversations among people,
Yep.
and them exploring their own beliefs, whether it be me digging deeper into evolution or you digging deeper into your faith and why you believe what you believe. Even if we both dig deeper into our own camps, we can still come together and say, hey, got some new information for you.
Yeah.
So in having these conversations, I've met a lot of different kinds of Christians, right?
Yeah.
Describe for me, of course, I've met young earth creationists.
Yep.
Those are pretty common. I've met Christians that are not young earth. They're just Jesus followers.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you on the?
I fall more because there's a lot of things you can't explain or you don't that scientists say they're millions of years old and this, that, and the other, and then you read the Bible and it gives a clear explanation of this was done in this time frame and this, that, and the other, and then there's even scriptural that says, well, one day to God is like 1,000 years, and that time has no meaning to him. So there's all these different thoughts, and I come down to the point that there's science changes when we find out new information,
Mm-hmm.
and it should.
Yeah.
If we didn't, you get stuck. So I think as we learn new information and we understand it, that the science can change. So therefore, we have to be open to change as a Christian because we don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do I believe that God could create the earth in 6 days? Absolutely, I do. He could absolutely create it in a day if he wanted to, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he chose 6 days as we have a week, and he took a day of rest. So, I don't know if I fall on the line of I'm a absolute young earth,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm open. And I actually thought your sister answered that really well. I'm open to if new stuff comes along or new information comes along, looking at doesn't change the fact of whether God created it or not, in my view.
For those of us that don't believe, what would you say is your best, say, argument? And I'll give you an example. We have a friend, a mutual friend, that says, "Look, I don't believe everything in Genesis." He basically says, "Look, when you look at the Bible, there's a lot of different types of writing in there. There's poetry, right? There's song,
Well, it's different authors, so that
different,
would make
and
sense.
that would be expected, right?
Mhm.
You've also got apocalyptic imagery, in Revelation,
Yeah, yeah.
And he says that, look, Genesis 1 through 11 is myth writing. It was early humans, and they were doing their best to figure things out. But it's essentially myth writing, but it still tells the story of we thought all these things, and then, it still leads into the story, but it's not cut and dry.
A lot of specifics, though, for
Right.
details that are in there about Adam and Eve and Cain and Abel, and
there are some specifics.
yeah,
But I don't think that goes against it being, I took a nap before I came in, right?
Mhm.
I had a dream, and I woke, and it was vivid, right? And I woke up and I told Patricia, I'm like, wow, I just had this dream. We go out on our front porch all the time, right? So I know what the view is down here, and I know what the view is down here. So in my dream, I heard something outside, and I looked out and I saw the view from down there, and it looked like a tornado, right? And I said, "Hey, babe, there's a tornado out here, right?" Well, then when I looked at it more and more, it wasn't a tornado. It was a plume of smoke, like there was a volcano erupting. It was and I'm like, that's not a tornado. That's something, but it was that same skinny type thing. And then I sat there and looked at it more and more. And next thing you know, there started being fireballs down at the bottom of it. And next thing you know, boom. And I'm looking down this way, and a fireball went straight down our street. And I'm like, look out, and it went straight down our street. And I watched it the whole way, and then it gets down here and it hits one of the houses and just, blows up. And I mean, it was vivid,
Yeah.
right? So even though there was details in that,
Yep.
right, it doesn't mean that it was real. It doesn't mean that it wasn't.
So what
just
part
a
of it's
dream,
not real? Is it
Well,
Adam and Eve not real? Cain and Abel aren't real? The tree of life, the serpent? And
I don't. I mean, I'm not a believer, right? So to me, it's as real as Spider-Man or Batman or any other fiction. I can value it, and I can find value in different things. Love each other, forgive each other. I can find value in there.
but the reality is, because you don't find that much anywhere else, right? I mean,
That much what value in any other writing.
to forgive people, like that's where do you see where other religions are, saying, or any other doctrine for that, books saying, how to forgive one another, how to
Yeah.
treat one another. I mean, it's one of the first oldest writings we have that tells us how to treat each other.
I may push back a little bit on that.
I'm not saying it's, well, I mean, there are earlier writings, but I'm saying it's one of the oldest, and it's also the most well documented of all books ever written. There's more history on that one book than there is on any other book ever written.
Well, we're gonna have some more conversations about that.
I'll bring the actual data on it, but there's to the Iliad, to all this other stuff that we take for granted, that we believe we know its existence and history and is part of history, and we don't even question it, and yet we question the validity of the Bible.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
There's a yellow pad over there. Would you sneak over here and hand that to me? This just happens to be topical. I was prepared for a conversation either way, so thank you. I love that we can get into these things, but this is a great question.
Yep.
Right? All right. So the Protestant Bible, right? Your Bible, 66 books, right? The Catholic Bible, 73 books. I was unaware of that. Other faiths, like the Ethiopian Orthodox, 81 books in their Bible. Until 1885, the King James Version had an additional 15 books. You've probably heard of that, the Apocrypha, right? The current Protestant Bible contains references to around 30 books and letters that are not in it, right?
Right.
And even Jesus references some of these books and letters.
So that's what most of the books are. There were letters written to the churches, in those different areas.
Sure, but even Jesus references some of these that aren't included in the current Protestant Bible. So many Bibles have included additional books or excluded some books because of dispute among scholars, right? Hundreds of Jewish and Christian books, like your Protestant Bible has 66, but there's been hundreds of them that at some point by some people have been considered inspired by God. So how do you determine that the books that are in your Bible are inspired by God, or that some of the other books aren't?
Well, that's a much deeper conversation than I know all the details of, but I do know a little that a book that was referenced in this book and then this book, then they included it. So you had to have multiple reference points of it being connected. There's not just one connection dot. And obviously Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were firsthand observers of Jesus and the crucifixion and the whole story. But there were, for them, the way they created, that came down to the 66 and how they eliminated some is if they didn't have connection points. And I have that information. It's not anything I've studied. It's just stuff I've come across throughout my readings, but I'll be glad to bring that at another time.
Yeah. Well, let's
the specifics of that.
So,
because it is interesting how they came and they've removed some books, and why did they remove some?
Right.
And I actually, for the first time here recently, I haven't started reading it, but I actually bought the Apocrypha books and have started reading. I want to start reading them. I haven't started reading them.
So that basically tells you about these books that were once considered inspired by God,
Yep.
and now the sentiment has changed.
Well, I think
Or
that it was
who's deciding, by the way?
back then. It was King James.
Okay.
He put together a group of people. Catholic was the majority of that religion then, but he put together a group, said, let's go through and put it together. And he, the one that paid for it and all that. So there's some political side to that too, right? That you think.
So we essentially got the Bible from Catholics.
I mean,
It's through that path.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
All right.
They were definitely involved in that, but it was also a process of picking, again, which scriptures would be in and which would not.
See, that makes it a little suspect for me, because it means there's just men.
It's writings, and there's things that if God said this is inspired word, and that's in the Bible.
Right, until 1885, when King James got his boys together and they decided.
If it's still there, right? It's still there.
Right, but what about the others?
I'm not saying you don't read them.
I mean, they were in there for 1,800 years, almost 1,900
There were
years.
letters to other churches, and for whatever reason, they decided not to put them in there. But
until James and the boys decided no more.
There's always a political, or there's always man has got his influence on everything.
Does that make you question anything at all?
It makes me curious about what's in the Apocrypha, and that's why I purchased it. But I haven't too much time working. I need more time to study.
Yeah, it's stuff like that makes me want to dig in and question.
Well, it's all right to question.
Sure,
but that doesn't. I may question King James, but it doesn't make me question God. The scriptures are still the scriptures. They didn't change.
Yeah.
The scripture that I've read since I was old enough to read hasn't changed.
But it wasn't originally written in English.
No, it was actually written in multiple languages.
Okay.
Greek, Latin, multiple languages written in.
Yeah, so it's been translated.
Yep, but they've gone back to some of the oldest texts that they found and dated, and made sure that does it line up with what we have today scripturally? Compared those scriptures.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Because I may be.
And I probably am too.
I'm no theologian, so.
And I'm not either.
Right. We're just a couple of dudes up here winging it, you know.
I'm a contractor.
Right. I'm a subcontractor, so you're here, but I'm done.
You probably make more money than I do.
That's doubtful.
I think most of my subs make more money than I do.
Well, why is it the roofers always drive the biggest trucks? Have you noticed that?
Oh, all F-250s.
Oh, dude, and they're jacked up. I mean,
every
roofer truck I see, I'm like, that dude's killing it, you know. But maybe they just got a thing for big trucks. So, question: virgin birth, right?
Yep.
All right. I feel like I heard it somewhere at some point that, we just talked about King James and his council.
Yep.
Deciding on things, and they also, went through and verified translations and all those kinds of things, right?
Yep.
But I heard that originally, if you go back to the Greek or Hebrew, whatever the original was, the word that was used there just meant young girl. It had nothing to do with virginity or not, just young, right?
But she wasn't married.
Well, I'm not going to get into her character or anything, because honestly, I wouldn't care if
there's a reason God chose her.
I'm just saying the original just meant young girl.
And boy, don't ever. Let me warn you right now. Don't ever.
I don't even know what's coming.
Question the Mary to a Catholic ever. I'm telling you right now. If you think you've been in some arguments, you have never.
I'm going to have to schedule that.
If you would like an argument with the Catholic, I'll be glad to bring several.
Okay. All right. Hey, next week we need a Catholic. We're going in on
I'll bring Cole Goodrum or Jack his brother, and you'll
Okay.
regret ever wishing you had met either one of them.
Okay, good. All right, that'll be awesome. So, but have you ever heard that the original just meant young girl? It had nothing to do with virginity.
No, I mean, I've never heard that.
Okay.
I'm not.
Look, before we get together again,
Yeah.
find out about that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'll talk about it. And it's a
Boy, I'm telling you, you want to make the Catholics mad, don't you?
it's a
Because they put her on a pedestal.
I know.
Just be careful with Mary. The worst arguments I have been in with Catholics are over the Mother Mary. I'm kidding you not.
Right.
Dead serious.
Right. So I've heard a lot of Christians that they don't feel like Catholics are Christians because of their reverence for Mary. It's almost like they have such a reverence for Mary that
I mean, none of us have it right. Perfect. None of us. Like, there's not one group that's got it right.
okay. All right.
I think God looks down there and goes, no, no, no. I mean, keep working, keep trying.
Okay.
But I just don't think there's, in that aspect, I don't think there's one way other than Jesus. Like, Jesus is the way. That's it. There is. And many religions get off of that and they fall away from that. And it has to revolve around Jesus.
Okay. That's more generous than I hear a lot of believers, because a lot of believers are like, no, the Catholics are doing it wrong. The Mormons are doing it wrong.
We're all doing it wrong.
Nobody's
got it perfect.
Okay.
Nobody.
So you don't feel
I grew up in a Church of Christ school and a Baptist church. So I'm Southern Baptist at that. So I got the fire and brimstone, and I got the, really conservative Church of Christ. And neither one of them have got it perfect. I mean, it's man that makes up the church. Man's imperfect.
But you're not one of those that holds to my denomination is the correct denomination. We're the ones that
have I in my lifetime? Yes.
Okay.
But I have come to the understanding that man is flawed and makes mistakes, and he forgives us anyway. Thank goodness.
Okay. All right. I like hearing that, because it like I said, it's a much more generous, a much more open worldview. I feel
as long as it revolves around Jesus. You don't have to know anything else but him.
Okay.
That's it.
That's Pedro's.
He's right about that. I've been around him enough. He's right about that. As long as you take all the religion out of it, and I've enjoyed that conversation with your sister where she deconstructed the religion side of it. And get to where it's about Jesus, you're on the right track. Okay. The relationship with Jesus that she has is real, and that's where it's at.
Okay. So this morning I was riding along, and Patricia thinks this is hilarious, but when I was a believer, I very much enjoyed various Christian artists, right? One of those Christian artists.
So what do you listen to now?
She thinks it's hilarious. Sometimes I still listen to my. So
is that cheating?
Well, I guess atheists have no deity, so I don't have anything to be cheating on. It's a healthy exploration, I guess, or I don't know what you would call it. But yeah, she thinks it's funny. I had a long road trip a few weeks ago, and of course I'd been through all the albums, and I was off in the country, so I lost my signal. So I was down to just listening to whatever I had already downloaded on my phone, right? Which there's stuff in there from years back, And I tend to go through my normal little playlist or whatever. Anyway, so in scrolling through all that, I ran across this Christian artist that I hadn't listened to in a long time, but I love this album. It was fantastic. So I turned it on. I had a long road trip. I turned it on and I started listening to it, Well, Patricia gets in my truck like the next day, and my Bluetooth automatically connects, and it just starts playing whatever I was playing next. And so it just comes on the radio, and she goes, You were listening to that? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I still enjoy the album, you know? So anyway, I had one of those moments again today. So I got in my truck and it connected and that's when it started playing, you know? So, there was a song in there about, and you may not be real familiar with this, but it was about, tearing the veil. The veil has been torn. Do you know much about
When
that?
referencing when Jesus was on the cross and the veil was torn,
Okay.
is that what
Yeah.
you're referencing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you know about that? And I can give you my very elementary interpretation
Yeah, I mean,
of it. So my elementary interpretation of it is before Jesus,
Mhm.
people tended to believe that in order to speak to God, you had to go through your local priest or your
the
local
Sanhedrin, the Pharisees,
your local holy man, right?
Yep.
But
now
then they
the
said
Catholic priest.
yeah, but they said Jesus tore the veil, so now we can speak directly with God.
No.
Am I off track? Am I misinterpreting?
No, it's about a relationship. So,
Okay.
I mean, he opened that door.
Okay. So here's my question. So now we are able to have direct communion with God,
Mhm.
right?
It's funny you said the word communion. Yeah,
You know,
because
communication.
we do communion
right?
every Sunday. You take the Lord's Supper
Sure, but
to
we're able.
commune with Him.
Yeah,
Ask Him forgiveness of what sins that I'm
right.
committed.
But in this belief,
Mhm.
we're able to speak and have a relationship with
Mhm.
the creator of the universe,
Mhm.
right?
Well, in this case, the Son of the Creator of the universe. Right?
Okay. All right. So now we're getting there. So not the actual, you know, so I'm right.
It's 3 in 1. It's a Trinity.
That's a difficult thing to wrap my head around. I've
It's
tried
the
over.
Holy Spirit, it's God, and it's Jesus.
So I'm riding this morning and I thought, was the veil torn? And so now that barrier's out of the way and we can have direct communication with God. Or did Jesus say, we're going to get rid of that veil and I'm going to be the veil? Did he replace the veil or did he tear the veil and get rid of that? In other words, could someone believe in God, believe that he created, everything,
Mhm.
believe that he made them, right?
Mhm.
But still doubt or have questions about or be unsure about the story of Jesus, a sacrifice, a resurrection,
Well, so
could they bypass all that
No.
and just say, look, I look
No.
around the world and I see all this
you
creation.
can't bypass Jesus.
You can't get past
That's
it.
the one story you can't bypass. You could, if you want to doubt Genesis, if you want to doubt Old Testament, but you can't. The one thing you cannot. He is the way, the only way. This is where the Muslims get it wrong. The Muslims don't believe he was anything but a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not worshiping the same God I'm worshiping. I worship the God that had Son Jesus. And that's he without him dying on that cross, there's no eternal life. For me, for anybody.
Okay. But someone couldn't say, look,
Now, I'm not God. So if God wants, because there's people in this earth that have died that never knew the story of Jesus. But if they looked up and knew, hey, God created the tree and the plant and we coexist and this just didn't happen, that's between God and them.
right, because it obviously begs the question of, okay, so what happened to everybody that died before Jesus?
Well, so that you had to make sacrifices. That's why they did animal sacrifices, sacrificing the lamb, which is funny because Jesus became the lamb. That's why they referred to him as the lamb.
Do you really think that up until Jesus, God needed some dead animals?
No,
Like he
it's
wanted.
It's not about the animals, and it's not about. Do you think he needs the
He
gold?
wanted
Do you
to-
think he needs
All
me?
right, I'll rephrase.
Do you think he needs me to even be a part of his story? No. He doesn't need me to make his story move. I'm choosing to be a part of his story.
Well, I'm getting back to the sacrifice.
Okay.
Like up until then, so God didn't need dead animals.
No.
So
He wasn't eating them.
So right. So I'll take a different. Maybe he needed to show that people were willing to give up something precious to them in order to, like, what was the point of all those sacrifices before?
But let's start with Jesus. Jesus is the blood that we needed for the sacrifice we needed for our sin. His blood is what washes us clean.
I mean, I've heard the phrase. I've heard the phrase, but God needed that?
No, we needed that. Not God needed that. We needed Jesus's blood, not God. So, but here, here's I'm gonna make the connection.
Okay.
So, back in the Old Testament, they made the sacrifice of the lamb, which was their lamb. That blood was their sacrifice to God for their sins. Man's fallen and has been since Adam.
Did God need that?
No, man needed that. God don't need us. We need him.
So men were just doing the
sacrifice. God created all this. He doesn't need us.
So men were just doing the sacrifices to what? Make themselves feel better?
No, they were doing it as a sacrifice. I know I'm imperfect. And at the time, they didn't have Jesus. So I'm sacrificing my best lamb for my sins.
So look, I'll end this on a different question. So we're unsure about the age of the earth, right? We don't know if
I've gone both ways on that. I mean, there's guys that I've followed that are new earthers, young earthers, young earthers, and I see their point, but their explanation of the flood and how it could mess with timelines, mess with erosion and different things and make things appear as they're older than they really are. Mm. So I just think you got to be open to both sides, right?
While I was still a believer, I did the 1,000 years, one day, 1,000 years. That was my final hanging on.
Yeah, I heard
to my
you
faith.
Say that with your sister.
Yeah, that was the way that I was struggling to hang on, and I said, I can explain it all with this. And then as I dug into other things, I just.
Do you think your sister has a personal relationship with Jesus? That's the one question I wanted to ask you during that whole thing.
Do I think that she has?
Do you think your sister has a personal relationship with Jesus?
No.
She does.
Right. I know that she thinks that she does.
No, she does.
Sure.
There's very few people you come across in this world that are genuine, that are real, that you can. Maybe this is the Holy Spirit God blesses us with, but I'm telling you, she is the real deal.
I get that. I get that feeling, and I respect it. If someone spoke just as eloquently, just as passionately about their relationship with any of the Hindu gods or Zeus or Thor or Apollo or none of that god
compares to Jesus. There's no story ever told.
That's what I was.
History of world that compares to Jesus, and a lot of people go out there searching. And I've read a lot of stories of people searching. They'll search every religion out there, and they come back and they say, "But there's no story that like Jesus. There's no story. There's no sacrifice that somebody made." And when you can wrap your head around, because it's a hard thing to wrap your head around, when you realize that we're sinners and that you don't deserve heaven, and yet the creator of the universe gave his son as a sacrifice, when you realize it's the most humbling thing I've ever experienced.
But look, we also witnessed very passionate believers attack us on 9/11.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose. That you just and that just explain the difference right there.
What I'm
One group's trying to kill another group because they don't believe in the same thing, and another one made a sacrifice for all of us, for all of mankind, for them.
I'm just
He
saying.
died for them. They chose not to follow him.
My point is just that people can passionately believe thing
But there's a difference.
and be
You see
wrong
the difference, right?
and be wrong about that thing.
I get that, and they were wrong. They wanted to kill a bunch of people.
I get that, but they passionately believe. They gave their lives
Jesus,
for a thing that we think is totally wrong.
but I don't see how you're comparing them to Jesus. That's a bad
I think it's part of
comparison.
so I think it's part of the human condition that it's amazing to me that religion is still a thing. But we
Well,
it's wired in us
Interesting.
that we want something to believe in. We want to think that there's
how can you walk outside and not see
something-
the trees and realize that didn't just happen? Especially the
so
fact
I believe it does just happen. So look, I have a pool in my backyard, right?
it didn't just happen,
Right. But right now there's nothing, it's just a pool, right?
right?
And if I keep putting chemicals into it and I keep stuff from growing in it,
Right.
then it'll stay nice. But if I turn around and walk away from it, right? You come back to that in 3 years and it's been untreated, left alone, it'll be a
It's like a
swamp,
pond, right?
right? I mean, eventually there'll be trees growing
Carson
out of that.
will want to come and frog gig out of it.
Exactly, right? So when you walk outside and you look, you can't think all that just, yeah.
Have you ever been hunting, deer hunting, or
Yeah.
gone out in the woods and just sat there and had an owl or a hawk or anything just come and land in a tree beside you, and just or a fox walking through and just never even know you're there,
Mhm.
and that peace that's in that woods is like none other I've ever experienced anywhere else I've tried.
Right. And some people have that experience and they go, Allah. Some people have that experience and they
But
go,
that's not the experience. I look at it and said,
Jesus.
You're wanting me to believe that fox and that owl and that tree that gives off what I need to breathe, and I give off what it needs to breathe. You're wanting me to believe that just happened.
Mhm.
There's no way.
Okay.
You want to talk about making a big leap of faith? That's a bigger leap than I'm taking.
Okay. When we get together again, you're going to bring in some information. Look,
What am I bringing in? Because I'll forget.
Apocrypha.
I'm old.
Apocrypha,
All right.
right? And also
That was easy.
the
'cause I've gotta
original
read it anyway.
word for virgin. And I'll bring in some stuff on evolution.
All right.
All right.
All right.
All right. Rick, thank you for coming in. I think everybody is going to enjoy seeing you and watching us.
I really doubt that. But
No, I think the thing that they're going to enjoy is the fact that two friends can have opposite worldviews and they don't have to avoid the conversations.
No.
They can dig deeper into them. And when they get curious about stuff, they can say, I'm going to go get some information on that and we'll come back to it and I'll see you next week. And, I think people are going to be like, I can't believe these guys do that. Every time that I've seen somebody, whether it be at a gas station or coffee shop or whatever, and, I'll have a mixed group there and I talk to people. So I'll end up talking to the table next to us or whatever. And I'm like, hey, so you know what this is? This is a mixed group of Christians and atheists. And we get together intentionally to talk about the stuff that we disagree with. Every time I tell somebody that, they go, y'all do what? What? I'm like, yeah, man, isn't that cool? And they're like, I can't believe you do that.
what's the coffee shop that we met at?
Caliber.
So I was walking in, listening to a book. I don't even remember what book it was, but it was a Christian book, and I was listening, and the guy goes, "Oh, I know that book," and had a conversation with him. I said, "Yeah, we're going to hear a bunch of atheists and Christians getting together," and he goes, "What?"
Yeah,
and he came in and joined us.
Right. I remember meeting that guy. He was like, "What?"
I wish he'd come back.
When I met that guy, I think he told me because he was a believer.
Oh, he was,
and I think he started, presenting his case.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear this, so I'm curious.
Well, I think I was still a little bit fiery, a little bit spicy.
Yeah.
I guess I tend to be anyway. I don't know.
Sometimes, most of it.
But anyway, I think I came in very pointedly. I never met the guy, and he just came up and said, "I know it's true because X, Y." And I'm like, Really? Well, you should look in. And next thing you know, I mean, not in a bad way or an aggressive way, but we're both very passionate and stating our point. And then we never saw the guy again. And I was like,
I hadn't seen him since.
Man, so who knows? Maybe he'll come back. I know you're coming back.
Yeah.
So next conversation coalition.
Yep.
We've talked about having you up there with.
That's bold.
Not by yourself. You
definitely don't want me by myself.
You have some people around you, but we just enjoy hanging out with you, and we enjoy having conversations with you. And
thank you.
You're like me. I think everybody likes you, whatever side they're on. They like Rick, so we're like.
They like Carson, and they put up with me. So
they do like Carson for sure. So
if we can get Claire to come, they'll forget about Rick really quick.
But you never know. Thank you for coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, buddy. See you, man.